I see you. The whisper didn't arrive like a sound so much as a pressure, a thin disturbance in the air that brushed the shell of his ear. It slid out of the vent above the stove, riding the warm breath of the heater, and vanished before his brain finished assembling the words. He froze with one sock half-rolled between his fingers. The apartment had settled into its nightly posture. Lights dimmed to pools, shadows layered and unmoving, the refrigerator's low animal hum steady enough to fade into thought. Outside, a distant siren thinned and dissolved. The heater clicked once, then exhaled. The vent sighed. I see you. He waited for his heart to slow. It did not. Kept tapping at his ribs like it wanted out. Air does weird things, he said aloud, and immediately hated how loud his voice sounded. It ricocheted off the cabinets, came back thinner. Old vents. Echoes. He stood very still, listening for the echo of himself. There was none. The vent breathed on. The apartment was small but lived in. A coffee ring on the end table, a jacket slung over the chair, dust freckling the baseboards where the vacuum never quite reached. The vent above the stove was an ugly rectangle, beige and chipped, its slats angled downward like lowered lashes. It had always been there. He had never thought about it. That felt important now. He turned the heater down a notch. The airflow softened, became a whisper of warmth across his forearms. The vent adjusted its pitch, a slight wheeze as the pressure changed, then settled. He listened hard enough that his ears began to ring. Nothing else spoke. He went back to his sock, rolling it up with exaggerated care, as if precision could ward off memory. He told himself the words had been his own, half-thoughts misfiring, brain filling silence with meaning. He had read about it. Pareidolia, like faces in clouds, like hearing your name in a crowd. Except the vent had said you. He folded laundry until his fingers tingled, stacking shirts that smelled faintly of detergent and heat. The apartment cooled. The heater clicked again, metal shrinking. The vent breathed again, patient. He did not look at it. When he did, it was because the shadows shifted. It was subtle. The slats cast thin stripes on the wall that should have stayed fixed. But one line seemed to deepen, as if the angle had changed. He stared until his eyes watered. The stripe did not move again. He laughed, a short sound that surprised him. Stop it, he told himself, which felt foolish because there was no one else to hear. He turned on the television without sound, letting the light flicker. The images crawled across the wall, breaking the shadows into harmless pieces. He sat on the couch with the remote clenched in his hand and tried to catalog the apartment the way he would for a checklist. Windows locked, door chain intact, bathroom empty, closet empty. He opened cabinets and looked behind the shower curtain. He even stood on a chair and peered into the vent with his phone's flashlight, angling it up into the throat of the building. It was dark, dusty, a rib of metal. Nothing moved. The air felt different afterward, cooler against his wrists, as if offended. He went to bed with the television still glowing, the volume low enough to be a murmur. Sleep came in pieces. Each time he drifted, the heater would click and wake him. Each time the vent breathed, his mind leaned toward it, listening. At some point, the television cut to black. The apartment exhaled its own silence. He lay there, eyes open, counting the seconds between breaths of warm air. The whisper did not come again. That was worse. Morning light made everything smaller. He drank coffee and stood beneath the vent, steam from the mug rising to meet the warm air. He told himself it was a neighbor, someone coughing into their duct, a trick of airflow. Buildings were communal bodies. Sounds traveled. All day at work, he felt watched by rectangles, vents, grates. He came home early, turned the heater off entirely, and opened a window despite the cold. The apartment held its breath. Without the heater, the vent became inert, a dead mouth. He cooked dinner in silence and ate standing up, as if sitting would commit him to something. The sun slid away. The temperature dropped. He put on a sweater. The cold made the shadows sharper. When he finally turned the heater back on, the apartment seemed to listen. There was a pause longer than usual before the click. Then the breath returned, warmer than before, pushing against his calves, his fingers. The vent woke with a soft rattle, metal settling. "I hear you," he said, because the words were there and needed to go somewhere. The vent answered by breathing. Later, lying in bed, he tried to think of the vent as a machine. Ductwork, pressure, physics. He imagined the maze of it above him, metal ribs and turns, carrying air from a central furnace like blood through veins. He imagined the building as an organism, indifferent. The whisper threaded through the airflow so gently it took a moment to recognize. "I see you." It was closer this time, or he was. The words brushed his cheek, warm and intimate, like someone leaning in to share a secret. He sat up. The room tilted. The heater hummed. The vent breathed. "That's not possible," he said. His voice shook. "Sound doesn't travel like that." The whisper came again, not louder, just clearer, the consonants precise. "I see you." He clamped his hands over his ears. The sound slipped through anyway, not loud enough to block, not quiet enough to ignore. It wasn't coming from everywhere. It was coming from the vent. He stood, heart hammering, and crossed the room. The floor was cold. He could feel the airflow along his shins, the vent's attention following. He reached up and pressed his palm flat against the metal. It was warm. It pulsed, faintly, with the rhythm of the heater. He pulled his hand away, leaving a print that faded slowly. The vent breathed again, as if satisfied. He backed into the living room and sat on the couch with his knees drawn up, the television flickering soundlessly. He tried to call a friend and hung up before it rang. What would he say? "My vent talks." The apartment seemed to contract around him. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder. The heater clicked. The vent breathed. "I see you," it whispered. "And there was something in the pause after you that felt like a smile." He tried one last time to be reasonable. If it's airflow," he said, choosing each word carefully, "then say something else." The vent was silent. Then, "You." His throat closed. He stared at the vent until the stripes on the wall seemed to lean toward him, shadows bending where they should not. He slept in fits, lights on, body rigid. When morning came, the whisper did not. He packed a bag and left the apartment cold and quiet behind him. The vent waited. When he returned weeks later, with boxes and resolve, the apartment greeted him with familiar hums. He turned on the heater. The vent breathed, warm and patient. "I see you," it whispered, as if it had never stopped. Her bedroom window was open, though she never opened it. She noticed it because the air felt wrong. Not colder, exactly, just unsettled, as if the room had taken a breath without her. The apartment was quiet in the way only late nights could be, when even the building seemed to sleep. The refrigerator ticking softly in the kitchen, pipes holding their breath between sighs, the faint electrical whisper of the hallway light she'd forgotten to turn off. She stood in the doorway to her bedroom with one sock half on, keys still warm in her palm, and watched the curtain lift and fall. The window was open. Not wide, just enough. A narrow, deliberate gap, like an eye not quite closed. She stared at it, waiting for memory to catch up. Some image of herself earlier that evening sliding the latch, lifting the sash for fresh air. Nothing came. She never opened it. Not at night. Not on the third floor, not with the alley below and the old fire escape that creaked when pigeons landed on it. Still, the window breathed. A thin ribbon of night air slipped in, cool against her wrist, carrying the distant sound of traffic and something else she couldn't place. Fabric brushing metal, maybe, or just the city rearranging itself. "It's fine," she said, because the silence felt too attentive. "I must have cracked it this morning." She crossed the room slowly. The floorboards were cool, familiar. The window frame loomed larger with each step, pale in the wash of the streetlight outside. The glass reflected her faintly. A blur of hair, the dark oval of her face, eyes caught in the glare. She reached for the latch and paused. The window seemed to hesitate with her, the curtain hovering, suspended, as if waiting to see what she'd do. The latch clicked easily into place when she closed it. Too easily. The window slid down without resistance, sealing with a soft, final sound. The curtain fell still. The room exhaled. She rested her palm against the glass. Cold. Solid. The night pressed on the other side, opaque and uninterested. There, she said, and laughed quietly at herself. She checked the lock anyway. It was intact. Firm. She tugged once, twice. The window didn't move. Satisfied, she turned away and finished changing, folding her clothes with unnecessary care. She kept glancing back, half expecting the curtain to stir on its own. Didn't. She made tea and carried it into the bedroom, set it on the nightstand. Steam rose and vanished. When she lay down, the mattress creaked softly beneath her weight, a sound she knew well. She let her eyes close. A draft brushed her ankle. She opened her eyes at once. The room looked unchanged. Shadows pooled where they always did. The window was still closed. The curtain hung straight. She flexed her foot, then pulled the blanket higher. Heat pooled under it. The draft faded. Old building, she thought. Air moves. She had almost drifted off when she heard it. A faint sound, barely there, like fingertips on glass. She held her breath and listened. Nothing followed. Her pulse slowed, reluctantly. She rolled onto her side, facing the window, just to be sure. The streetlight flickered outside, dimming and brightening in an irregular rhythm. Each pulse shifted the shadows in her room, stretching them, pulling them thin. The window frame cast a long, dark bar across the wall that seemed slightly longer than it should have been. She frowned and sat up. The curtain was moving again. Not much, just a gentle sway, like someone breathing near it. Her gaze slid down to the sill. The window was open. The gap was the same as before. Narrow. Intentional. No, she whispered. She swung her legs out of bed and crossed the room in 3 quick steps, heart beating too hard. The air spilling in was colder now, insistent, carrying the smell of damp concrete and rust. She slammed the window shut and locked it, fingers clumsy. The latch clicked. She shook it until the glass rattled. Intact. She pressed her forehead briefly against the cool pane, grounding herself. "I locked you," she said under her breath. "I remember it." The window offered no resistance, no acknowledgement. It simply stood there, pale and blank, reflecting her wide eyes. She backed away slowly and sat on the bed. Her tea had gone untouched, steam gone. The room felt smaller, as if the walls had edged closer while she wasn't looking. She tried to reason it out. Faulty latch. Old wood swelling and shrinking with temperature changes. She'd read about that. Windows that slipped open on their own. Physics, not intent. The explanation felt thin. The window had waited until she wasn't watching. She stayed awake for a long time, lights on, every sound amplified by her attention. Somewhere outside, a bottle shattered. Car passed. The building creaked, settling its weight. Each noise seemed to pass through the window first, filtered, considered before entering the room. At some point, exhaustion dragged her under. She dreamed of standing in the hallway, watching her bedroom from a distance. The window was open in the dream, curtain lifting and falling. She couldn't move. She could only watch as the streetlight flickered and the shadows inside her room rearranged themselves into something that almost made sense. She woke just before dawn. The light in the room was different, thin, gray, uncertain. The window was closed. Relief washed through her, sharp enough to make her dizzy. She sat up and laughed softly, rubbing her face. Of course it was closed. She must have dreamed it. Stress did strange things. Memory was unreliable. She went to work that day with the lingering sense of having forgotten something important. That night, she came home earlier than usual. The apartment greeted her with its familiar hush. She stood in the doorway to her bedroom and felt it again. That subtle wrongness in the air, the sense of interruption. The window was closed. She exhaled and stepped inside. She set her bag down, changed clothes, moved around the room, deliberately casual. She did not look at the window again until she was ready. When she did, it was still closed. Locked. She checked the latch, fingers steady this time. Solid. Unbroken. See? She said aloud, to the room, to herself. It stays how I leave it. She turned off the light and lay down in the dark. The apartment hummed around her, appliances whispering their small, domestic secrets. The night pressed in gently, politely. Minutes passed. Then more. The air shifted. Cold brushed her cheek, tracing the line of her jaw. The curtain whispered. She did not open her eyes right away. She knew what she would see. She lay there, listening to the window breathe, feeling the room adjust around it, accommodating. When she finally looked, the window was open just enough to remember her.